Hello. Today we are going to get started in section 1-2, and the first thing we're going to talk about is some notation, right? The way that mathematically we write things down to communicate with other people and other mathematicians. So we are going to be talking about inequality, interval, and set builder notation. So let's look at some number lines here. Okay, we've got this graph, and we've got some number A. We're not sure what it is. And if we're just going to describe what's happening, right, this where the blue line is, we would say, let's see, this is all the numbers, all the x's that are greater than A, right? And here we could say this was all the x's that are less than A. Here, this looks a little bit different, right? Here we've got I call this a curved bracket or parenthesis on the number line. And here we have a square bracket, right? On these next two examples, some square brackets. So what does that mean? That means that x is greater than or equal to A. So that means A is included in that. And here it's all the x less than or equal to A. Here we've got A's and B's, right? Two different numbers. And we've got our curved brackets, our parentheses. So we'd say, okay, this blue line is all the x's that are strictly between A and B. If we jump down here to the bottom, we've got two square brackets, and we'd say that's all the x's between A and B, including A and B, right? And then in these two examples, we've got a combination. This could be greater than or equal to A or less than B. And here it's greater than A, and then up to B and also including B. Okay, so conceptually, that's what we're talking about here. And we've got some different ways that we can write, some different notation we can use to express those ideas. So the first should be, these should be familiar to you, right? Inequalities. Okay, here we just have x is greater than A or x is less than A. X is greater than or equal to A or less than or equal to A. Right, so just a greater than or less than sign is associated with just a curved bracket on the number line there. Greater than or equal to or less than or equal to is associated with the square bracket. And then here we've got like two-sided inequalities, right? We have x is greater than A and less than B, greater than or equal to A and less than B, and so forth. Right, so hopefully inequalities look kind of familiar to you. This might be new. Interval notation is something that we're going to use in this course. We've got to get kind of used to it. So you'll note the curved brackets or the parentheses match what we're using here on the number line, right? So here we've got a curved bracket, A, comma, infinity, curved bracket or parenthesis, right? This means the interval from A all the way up to infinity. Down here, we're going from negative infinity up to A, right? So negative infinity is on the left and A is on the right. When we're writing intervals, the number or value or expression that's on the left is always the one that's to the left on the number line, and the one on the right is always the one that's to the right on the number line. So again, here we're going from A to infinity, but we use a square bracket because A includes A, right? It's all the x's that are greater than or equal to A. And here we have a curved bracket for a negative infinity and a square bracket for A. So something important, we always use a curved bracket for infinity because you can never actually include infinity, right? Infinity doesn't exist. It goes on forever, so you can never actually include infinity. So if you have an infinity in your interval, it always has a curved, like a parenthesis next to it, never a square bracket. And here we're going from A to B, A to B, A to B, A to B, with either a square or a curved or parenthesis on either side of the interval. Okay, so let's look at this. This is a little bit different, okay? Here we've got a number line, and it's hard to see, but everything on the number line is included, except for we've got this little open circle here at 2, right? On a number line, an open circle means does not include 2. Okay, so how would we write this? So, I mean, if we're just speaking English, we'd say everything on the number line, all real numbers except for 2. But if we're going to use mathematical notation, we could use inequalities. We could say all the x is less than 2 or the x is greater than 2. Or we could use our interval notation, right? We could go from negative infinity up to 2 and then use curved brackets or parentheses on either side of that interval, because infinity, we always use a curved bracket. 2, it doesn't include 2, right? And then over here, we're going from 2 to infinity with curved brackets. And then here, we've got this new symbol. That's called a union symbol. And it's convenient because it's a union and it looks like a U, right? That means these two intervals, the union of those two intervals. So anything that's in this interval or that interval is included. Okay, so that's 2 intervals kind of stuck together. We use that little U symbol. All right, so here's another example. Instead of A's and B's, we've got numbers. So here we're going from 5 to 10. And now instead of brackets, we're using circles, either closed circles like here at 10 or an open circle here at 5. Okay, so this is really similar to what we just went through. It just has numbers and it's using circles instead of brackets on the number line. Either one is fine. Okay, you can use brackets or you can use circles. Either is used in textbooks or just kind of in regular math discourse. So let's see, inequality notation. If you want to take a minute and pause this and just kind of look at that, see if it makes sense to you, think about it. Interval notation, again, we kind of already talked about that. But here we've got something new. We have set builder notation. Okay, we're not going to use this that much in this class, but I thought I'd just present it because it is mathematically something that's used as you go forward in math quite a bit. So we're saying, what's the set of all the numbers? Okay, so we can tell it's a set because you've got these little curly brackets on the side, right? And this is how we'd say this in English. All the h's, the set of all the h's, such that, that's what this straight line means, such that h is greater than 5 and less than or equal to 10. So we'd say the set of all the h's such that h is greater than 5 and less than or equal to 10. Okay, you'll notice that this little part here is the same as the inequality notation, right? That matches in each of these cases. So really the idea of this is it's a way to describe, to use set builder notation. That's what we're doing. We're talking about sets. Again, we're not going to use this that much in this course, but I just wanted to introduce you to it. And down here, you'll also notice there's this R with like doubles, like a fancy R, right? It's kind of interesting font. An R written like this represents all real numbers. Okay. Again, we're not going to use it that much in this class, but that's what it means. All real numbers, it goes from negative infinity to infinity. All right, let's try this. I want you to pause this video and see if you can write this, all the kind of dark blue sections using set builder notation and interval notation. Sorry, you don't have to do set builder notation. I want you to use interval notation and inequalities. Okay, so write this as an inequality and using set builder notation. Pause the video and then come back and we'll do it together. Okay, so hopefully you've done this. Here we've got our problem. And when I'm writing this on a paper, a lot of times I use a little squiggly line just because then it's easier for me to see what sections of the number line are included. So first let's do inequalities. So this inequality, let's see, it goes from 1 to 3 and there's filled in circles. So on my left, I'm going to put 1 and on my right, I'm going to put 3 and I'm going to use greater than or equal to because the circles are filled in. And then let's see, this section is everything greater than 5. So I'm going to say x greater than 5. If I'm used to doing inequalities, I don't have to say less than infinity because that's kind of implied. And I'd write or. Okay? And using interval notation, I'm going to write 1 to 3, 1 comma 3, and I'm going to use square brackets because they're filled in circles, union, right, write my little u, and then I'm going to go from 5, comma, all the way to infinity, and I'm going to use, I always use a parenthesis by infinity, and I'm going to use a parenthesis because this is an open circle.
Can you come to my room with your computer?
All right, here's another one. Pause it and do the same thing. Okay, here we've got some intervals on a number line. Let's see, this first one, let's do inequalities. We're going from, it's all the x's less than -2. So I'm going to say x is less than or equal to, because of that filled circle, -2. And then let's see, this interval is going to go from -1. I'm going to say greater than or equal to because it's a filled circle. Put an x and then, less than 3. And I'm just going to use a less than sign. I messed up there. Just a less than sign than 3 because it's an open circle. And I'll use the word or. Or if I want to do interval notation, we're going to go from -infinity to -2 with this closed bracket, union, -1, comma, 3, parenthesis. All right, and those are the three kinds of notations that we can use, but we're really just going to use 2, interval notation and inequalities.